I'm Bunny, and today on Otome Rambles, I'll be talking about Otome's latest hit, Over Requiemz. Before we begin, I'd like to give some short disclaimers, so feel free to pause the video to read them if you would like, and if not, let's get on to the video. A sudden twister whisks a high school girl away to another world, and what awaits her is the death penalty. At the government's behest, and in exchange for their pardons, she embarks on a journey alongside her fellow death row inmates. Alleged murderers. The road to the end may be arduous and perilous, but choices must be made. And no matter what, do not regret your choice. Over Requiemz was released on April 17th, 2025, in Japan on the Nintendo Switch. It has a Sarah G rating that it has definitely earned. If you're hoping it's from all the icha going on, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Over Requiemz was created by Otome in collaboration with Colgado Studios after being announced at the 2023 Otome Party. Hiroko Hosoya is the director of this title. The scenario writers include Juro Negishi, Akira Natsuno, and Masa Nakagoshi. Kazari Taiyu serves as the game's main illustrator, their last credit on an Otome game being back in the early 2010s. Most of this team has previously worked on Regit titles, which, if you know anything about Regit, kind of checks out. Toto, we are definitely not in Kansas anymore. In a fledgling kingdom, far, far away, a fearsome demon tore the sky into two. Red snow poured down, bringing about the birth of monsters across the land. To appease the heavens, a human sacrifice was offered, saving the country. This is the tale of the land of Oz. Oz is ruled by a king, aided by his 4 cardinal witches, and is connected by a sprawling yellow brick road. Its beginnings aren't the only peculiarity this land boasts. Foreign, yet oddly familiar, dilapidated monuments regarded as ruins litter the country. Every few years, in any one of the regions, the ruins undergo strange changes and experience an influx of dangerous monsters. In such cases, those on death row are given the opportunity to put their life on the line by exterminating these threats in exchange for their acquittal. Native to Tokyo, Yuhiru is quite shocked to find herself in a foreign land and then on death row mere moments later. It doesn't help that her black eyes and hair make her a target of vitriol from the superstitious, who believe those with said features are demonic. Such events would faze most people. Yuhiru takes it mostly in stride, determined to find her way back home in her journey to the elusive ruins. Kaise Ozma, voiced by Youhei Akazami, is known as the King Killer, accused of murdering his own father. Born with jet black hair and eyes resembling those of the Demon of Calamity from the country's founding tale, Kaise has been regarded as a bad omen since his birth. Aware of the unease his presence causes the normal person, he keeps to himself as much as possible, and as a result, doesn't have the best social skills. A single father who works A single father of 4 children. Claude Grain, voiced by Makoto Furukawa, is known as the Village Killer, accused of murdering his entire village in the span of one night. Ruined vegetation as his concentration, Claude formerly worked in the capital as a researcher before being dismissed for his crimes. Heedless logic guided him through all life's ups and downs, but still make sure to pay mind to the emotions of those around him. His reliable personality definitely gets taken advantage of by certain people, though. A man who would never hurt a fly. Molly Woodland, voiced by Kaito Ishikawa, is known as the Traveler Killer, an undertaker accused of murdering traveling merchants. His princely appearance greatly contradicts such a dreadful act, though he does have a habit of teasing those around him. Similar to Yuhiru, being on death row doesn't seem to bring him down all that much. He may maintain his innocence, but he gives off the air that the verdict is of little consequence to him. The lion does concern himself actually, a little too much even. Noel Bestia, voiced by Ryota Suzuki, is known as the Night Killer, accused of murdering his entire platoon. If anyone's actually guilty of their charges, just going off their overall demeanor, it's gotta be the guy who's always down to throw hands. Despite his short fuse, Noel is still a knight and lives by an oath to serve and protect, and rises to the occasion. The embodiment of accidentally becoming important at work. Dorothy, voiced by Soon Ho-rie, is the Witch of the North. In theory, he is entrusted with guiding the death row inmates to the ruins from which they must purge monsters. In practice, well, he's trying, sort of, and that's what counts. While he struggles to take his job seriously, he is incredibly serious about Yuhiru's well-being, almost suspiciously so. After a brief prologue, each route contains 5 chapters before branching into the LI's Fact or Dark route. In the Fact route, our male lead works out his worries and woes and is #healed at the end. In the Dark route, we go absolute nightmare mode, and we are front row seat to the world's nastiest crash out. Each route has 5 chapters, which diverge into 2 ends. These contain CGs. No end is formally labeled as good or bad, opting for a letter system. There really isn't a recommended route order. I'd personally say maybe save Dorothy for last, but my play order is as follows: Claude, Noel, Molly, Kaise, Dorothy. I will go through the routes in the order in which I completed them. I played each LI's Dark route before their Fact, but I will be discussing their Fact first since that contains the entirety of said character's story. Spurred by a researcher's curiosity, or perhaps an older brother's caring heart, Claude takes an interest in our otherworldly visitor. He promises to aid Yuhiru in acclimating to the land of Oz, while she finds her way back home. Claude's ability to always push forward amidst adversity is something Yuhiru comes to admire, but such a trait could prove to be a double-edged sword.
自分の中が空洞になっちまったみたいに。まるで荒れた畑に吊るされたかかしだ。前にも後ろにも進めず、棒立ちになって朽ち果てた作物をただ眺めてるだけ。俺にできることは、もう一つも残されちゃいない。
I enjoyed Claude's story way more than I thought I would. I was so surprised. It laments our inability to rewrite the past and love the people you should have when they were there, but suggests that you can continue to honor them through living. It's a heartwarming message, and I personally felt like its execution is so deeply bittersweet and cathartic. Claude's journey through his grief is complicated by his stubborn clinging to rationality and reason. I also have the utmost praise for the villain here. He works so excellently as Claude's foil character. Their stories are truly 2 sides of the same coin. Despite my positive words for the overall narrative, I did find Yuhiru and Claude's romance rather average. It won't be the last time I say this, but I think they worked well as comrades at most. I struggle to say I felt more invested in their romantic journey than in Claude's individual one. However, there is a palpable growth on Yuhiru's side at least, which is more than what some other routes give us. Truthfully, I was not sure what to expect from my first Dark route, so I opted to proceed with caution. Even then, I loved scratching my head. Starting both somber and strong, I was gripped by its initial scenes. Its depiction of the helplessness grief invokes in a person even tugged at my heartstrings. Sadly, it was kinda downhill from there for both me and Claude. The storyline quickly departed self-exploration and veered into camp. The fantasy elements are ever present in the game, and this coming critique could truthfully be applied to most of the routes, but the contrivances to accelerate Claude's mental deterioration felt inorganic. A complete departure in tone from heavy contemplation to trigger-happy crazy, and I couldn't help but be left incredibly disappointed. I will still fondly hold on to the emotions that its beginnings elicited from me, though. It's a little funny how I totally adore Claude's Fact route, yet have less than stellar sentiments towards his Dark route. It is what it is, but I'm sure it's obvious which of the 2 was my favorite. Yuhiru can't help but be frightened by Noel's booming presence and feisty personality. Such a reaction isn't anything out of the ordinary for Noel. What is Yuhiru's willingness to attempt to see eye to eye with the unruly knight. Being regarded as anything more than a malicious troublemaker comforts Noel, but for some reason, it also terrifies him.
俺ん中に何がいいんだよ。怖えんだよ。自分が。
I enjoy the more psychological take on Noel's cowardice and how it contrasts with his otherwise lion-hearted personality. That being said, the truth of his conflict is a bit obvious pretty early on in his story, and isn't unveiled until the tail end of the factor out. This is not an inherently bad thing. However, coupled with said conflict being laid to rest in just a, albeit major, scene, left me a little unsure what to think of it all. I had similar doubts about how the villain fit into Noel's narrative. What I loved about the other routes is how antagonistic forces are fleshed out, or how side characters might have their own character arcs, all while supporting the Li story. I don't really feel like I got that in Noel's route, unfortunately. The antagonist and the chosen side character were both underutilized, considering their supposed proximity to Noel and his central conflict. I can overlook the side character to a degree. On the other hand, the lack of character depth and further exploration of the antagonist's motives made their positioning as Noel's foil character pretty lackluster. I have more flowers to give to Yuhiru and Noel's relationship. Noel is a very candid guy. He may be a knight, but his love is more than just a desire to protect. Noel views Yuhiru as his equal and a competent individual with her own unique strengths. Noel and Yuhiru love to build each other up. Furthermore, Yuhiru experienced such fantastic personal growth alongside Noel. I'd even say it's probably the best instance of such in the whole game. The Dark Route capitalizes on Noel's innermost fears, and as is the Dark Route, Yuhiru gets caught in the crosshairs. This route is probably the most unique of the bunch, and is one of the two that let Yuhiru be more flexible. It eventually leaned into a survival horror concept, which worked well. The build-up is on the slower side, but the lively character dynamics keep the route from feeling dull or dry. I have some reservations, but I think both of Noel's routes were still pretty enjoyable. Noel is a lively and endearing character with a heart of gold. I'm gonna give it to the Dark Route though. What can I say? I love the laughs and the thrills I got out of it. Yuhiru hesitantly accepts Molly's insistent acts of kindness during their travels. It doesn't take long to realize that there are strings attached. Now, an unwilling confidant, Molly informs Yuhiru of his wish to meet his soulmate at the end of their journey. Could such a romantic wish stir his unfeeling heart, or will it only prove to steal it more?
雨に打たれた金属が錆びつくように、ボロボロになりながら動いてる。錆びついたあの人の心を今、支えてるのは君だ。
This route impactfully tied the idea of a Tin Man into Molly's objectifying self-perception, an attitude that is reinforced by his surroundings. Despite its short length, the fact route manages to convincingly depict what becomes of the disregarded and shunned in the land of Oz, with our humble Undertaker at the forefront. I know we're in Oz and not Aladdin, but it truly did feel like a whole new world compared to the others. The dynamic between Yuhiru and Molly is electric. Obsessed. It starts way rockier than the others. The mood should have been a bit darker than what it ended up being realistically. Instead, it maintains this air of comedic eccentricity, which is later replaced with something a bit more sincere the closer they become. Just like ogres, Molly has layers, and Yuhiru isn't opposed to peeling them away to get to that tin heart of his. Falling right in place with Molly's background, Yuhiru becomes the perfect right-hand woman. Let me be clear, this Dark Route can get a little kooky beans compared to the others, but I love it for that. This is the first one that had me consistently at the edge of my seat. Molly's background reveals plenty of his moral code. In getting mixed up with him, Yuhiru runs a real risk of going to some very grim places that she avoids in the fact route. She isn't so lucky in the Dark Route. Here, Yuhiru and Molly are two deeply broken people trying to put each other back together, with no resources to do so. There is some genuine mind freakery going on that adds so much to the mystery and anxiety and just where the story might take the two. I know some of its contents may trip up some players, but I think Molly's Dark is worth the play. I'm so glad that I played it before the fact, since it purposely raises questions answered in its counterpart. I wasn't the hugest fan of the endings though. The one I was really digging dragged out to create a merry bad end sort of situation. I feel like committing to the tragedy of it all would have been more narratively resonant. Molly's routes were pretty much matched in quality. The suspense, the ambiance, the mystery, we get it all out of the front gate in Molly's route. The mood feels reminiscent of RPG Maker horror games from the 2010s like Mad Father, The Witch's House, and the like. I was already gripping my controller with bated breath just one chapter into the route. Both routes were such an experience that it's hard to choose, but I think I prefer the fact route. Kaise, a prince who's never known the company of a friend, clumsily extends his hand out towards Yuhiro. The camaraderie the pair slowly begin to form cannot be denied, but a demon is what the people think he is, and a demon cannot afford the luxury of having someone by his side. When harsh realities come crashing down, will Kaise fight to move on or cling to whatever he has left?
俺はずっと罪を背負っている。生まれてきた瞬間から。もしかしたら、それよりずっと前から。
I thought Kaise's lonely yet loving nature was clearly illustrated. He holds a lot of faith in humanity, even when it doesn't ever seem to return the gesture. He isn't willfully ignorant of the fact. He just accepts that's how things are for him. When it comes to others, he refuses to take this same defeatist attitude, which colors his relationship with Yuhiro. But I'm not entirely sold on them being in love. I don't feel like I witnessed them fall in love so much as go through hell and back together. I might attribute this to Yuhiro working more as a healing force to Kaise, and not much more than that. They're cute nonetheless. Kaise's dark route was another hard sell for me. I honestly couldn't believe an ounce of his wickedness, even for a second. Much like Claude, the insanity felt heavy-handed and a tinge awkward. On a more positive note, I thought the route had great foreshadowing for one of the endings. I had grown quite keen on Kaise throughout the game, so it was a surprise that I left even his fact route fairly neutral on him. Sorry Kaise, but still, another point for the fact. It doesn't come as much of a surprise to Yuhiro that there's more to Dorothy than he lets on, but the extent of it all unnerves her. Still, Dorothy seems the same as ever. That is, until Yuhiro finally notices the wistful look that underscores his words.
素敵な靴は素敵な場所へ運んでくれます。きっとあなたの進む先に素晴らしいものが待っていますよ。
Sporting a name reserved for the girl with the ruby red slippers herself, Dorothy carries a certain mystique distinct from that of the others. One wonders, what merits a love interest having this name instead of the protagonist? The answer might ruffle your feathers depending on your preferences. Despite fitting into a selfish trope that's romantic on its face, the story gives Dorothy a cynical and selfish undertone. This is showcased as we dive into the truths of this world and its correlation to him. In other words, this route plays as an unofficial truth route. I didn't really feel one way or another about the revelations of this world, truth be told. The main sell is Dorothy. Dorothy takes up nearly all of the narrative. And trust, while I think the end product is still pretty great, it kinda turns Yuhiro into Dorothy's very own Toto. I can clearly see that the two love each other. It's impossible to finish Dorothy's routes and not think that. I just think we saw the romance and the world more in Dorothy's eyes than we do in Yuhiro's ultimately. With endgame fatigue slowly tugging at my feet, I started this dark route with meager enthusiasm. Soon enough, girl, I was locked in. Yes, there are still elements of the other dark routes that I had sorta grown tired of by this point, but here, they appealed to me. Dorothy's character wants made him a perfect fit for the disintegration arc that we witnessed. There's a fair amount of gruesome affairs, yet The greatest unease is derived from Dorothy's struggle with his severe paranoia. When we are given a glimpse into his slipping state of mind, we see bits of firm convictions. This flickering self-awareness and dubious rationale felt appropriate and allowed for a compelling push and pull before he fully lets go of what's right and wrong. I also enjoyed how Yuhiro isn't so bound by her circumstances, literally and figuratively. This is something that I also enjoyed in Noel's route. This way, Yuhiro bounces a bit more off her surroundings and actively contributes to Dorothy's emotional turmoil in pivotal scenes. This prevents her from being a mere object of obsession and more of a participant in the story. Dorothy is a great conclusion to Over Requiemz. I'm pretty happy that I saved him for last. As someone who is clamoring for his fact, I'm surprising even myself when I say I might have to go with the dark route for my favorite of the two. Yuhiro is quick-thinking, resourceful, brave, and incredibly optimistic. Her actions showcase a level of maturity and self-awareness that I quite enjoyed. She is always ready to have her allies back and works great as their partner. Throughout the route's tumultuous storylines, Yuhiro's personality stays pretty consistent. While Yuhiro has a defined personality, her core character is less so. As is the setup of Dorothy, no, not that one, Yuhiro longs for a place different from boring old Tokyo. However, rather than sincere disillusionment with a mercilessly fast-paced society, as she alludes to numerous times, Yuhiro's qualms with her home mostly stop at blanket statements, ultimately reading more as teenage flights of fancy to me. In some routes, the topic of her past is broached to use as a launchpad for character development, but it always feels like it stops before getting too specific. It's not something I feel significantly bogs down the game, but I do think it can make Yuhiro's character feel fleshed out in comparison to the allies. For this reason, I'd say Yuhiro shifting into the supporting character position is a bit of a constant across the routes. There is just usually more to unpack about her ally rather than her. I of course believe there is merit in how she engages with the narrative, and that she works to enhance an already compelling story. But for the most part, the show can and will go on whether she's center stage or not. Love the guy, but I think Dorothy is the worst offender of this. That being said, I see all this being intentional for a more insert-friendly MC. I'm sure a ton of people have wished they could leave the monotony of their current lives and go somewhere far, far away. Like Yuhiro. It's a matter of perspective at the end of the day. Over Requiemz spends the entirety of its routes focusing on the love interest's personal journeys of grappling with their troubled pasts. The burdens they each carry push them to heal, or into ruin, depending on your choice at the branch. My main critique lies in what happens when you choose ruin. This far into the video, it shouldn't come as much of a shocker that most of the allies turn out to be pretty morally upright people, which is why the dark routes could hardly veer out of realm of spectacle. Considering some of the circumstances of the love interests, it can be a bit hard to believe that some of them end up in total insanity in just 5 chapters. As a result, they sometimes lack depth, proper build-up, and or could run a bit samey, even ones I enjoyed. I know some of the fun is just the what-if of it all, but I feel like it's a fair point since some of the routes were quite successful as convincing stories, while others weren't as much. To be fair, I gently echo these sentiments for the fact routes as well. I noticed the reuse of plot points and concepts, particularly in the endings. Other than that, it's more of a vibe, but I'm not totally sure if that just comes with the territory of having to clear 2 routes to get to the next LI. The romantic development in Oz is not quite there for me. I said earlier that Yuhiro is a great partner, but that doesn't necessarily mean she was always a great romantic partner. I feel like there could have been a better transition from a platonic relationship to a romantic one. There was just a need for Yuhiro and the ally to decompress before we went to wanting to become a family. Like, bro, we just got here. Speaking of platonic relationships, Oz's are great. Yuhiro blends into this wacky group effortlessly. I think this clip really captures this group's vibes.
食べるからみんなで平らげていいよ。
お前だるいこと言ってんなよ。入っちまえば胃袋も動き出す。ほら、口開けろ。
やべ、暴行です。そこの魔女さん、王国の騎士様が庶民に暴力を。
職務外です。勝手に解決してくださいよ。
なあ、こら、皿が落ちる。
俺が抑えている。安心してくれ。
いや、皿じゃなくてノイルを抑えろ。
The allies themselves have great banter and come together to rally behind the current love interest when they're in need. I like it when the other allies don't just drop out of existence after we're locked into a route. It makes the world feel more lived in. I am also of the strong belief that no matter the genre or tone of something, it never hurts to add a cheeky joke now and then. Over Requiemz does both. The absolute highlight of the game is the character writing. The allies' conflicts are handled with a real care that continuously impressed me. Even when I felt fatigue set in, the emotionally poignant scenes would really resonate with me across all the routes. Claude is a toss-up for my least favorite dark route, yet it still contains probably one of my favorite moments in the entire game. The journey we take with every ally ends up being one I don't regret embarking on. Over Requiemz has top-notch character-driven stories, a fun MC, and is capable of skillfully exploring various themes ranging from grief to morality. However, the delicacy of the writing can vary. In addition, the idea of 2 routes per ally sounded more appealing than it ended up being for me personally. Regardless, I still enjoyed my time in this novel reimagining of The Wizard of Oz, and would definitely be open to any future installments. I smelled some sequel bait in some of these routes after all.